Hello everyone, this is Myzzrym bringing you another episode of League of Legends 2 Dota 2, this time on Heroes and Champion stats. It is very important to note that in Dota 2, each hero has 3 different types of attributes: Strength, Agility, and Intelligence. Each point in Strength will increase your maximum health by 19 and your health regeneration by 0.03 health per second. Each point in Agility will increase your armor by 0.14 and your attack speed by 1. Each point in Intelligence will increase your mana pool by 13 and your mana regeneration by 0.04 per second. On top of that, each hero has a main attribute, and every point into that main attribute will increase his attack damage by 1. Health, or HP, is almost exactly the same in both games. The only difference is that in Dota 2, the health is influenced by the amount of strength you have. Armor reduces the amount of physical damage you take. Now, the numbers are way different in League of Legends and Dota 2, but the concept is the same. Basically, the more armor you have, the less damage you will take. Keep in mind that in Dota 2, the agility also influences the armor. Each 7 point of agility, you will gain 1 armor. Magic resistance is the first big difference we'll cover in this video about those two games. Magic resistance in theory is somewhat like armor, but for magical sources, so the more magic resistance you have, the less damage you take from magical source. Now, in League of Legends, it is a stat like armor. You can stack it up like armor, and it will reduce the spell damage. In Dota 2, it is somewhat different. Magic resistance is percentage based, so it's not like armor. You will not have a flat value. Each hero starts out with 25% magic resistance, and you can only buy one item to increase your magic resistance. The others will not stack with it, so only the highest value will be taken into account. The spell resistance coming from the items stack with the innate spell resistance as well as the hero skills, as some heroes have spells to increase their spell resistance. Note that since it's percentage based, it's not stacking additively, so having 25% plus 20% does not equal 45%, but 40% of magic resistance in total. Something else that doesn't exist in League of Legends is the magic immunity. So basically, for example, Black King Bar, if you use it in Dota 2, you will not be able to be targeted by spells. Only some spells actually work against magic immunity, but this is more complex and I will go over it in another video. It does not work the same way as Olaf Ultimate in League of Legends. Olaf Ultimate makes him invulnerable to CCs, so you can still use the spells on him, but he will not be stunned nor slowed. Here, you cannot even click on the enemy hero with your spell. It won't work. One stats that Dota 2 doesn't have is tenacity. So for example, in League of Legends, if you have 40% tenacity, the slows and the stuns will last 40% less duration. This doesn't exist in Dota 2. The magical category is where most things are different between those two games. The most obvious difference is that there's no ability power in Dota 2. There's only a very few amount of spells that actually scale with something like attributes or mana pool. Most spells only have base damage and there's nothing you can change about it. Most of the time the base damage is actually quite high, so it's still very useful in the mid to late game. Cooldown reduction also doesn't exist in Dota 2. Well, there's a few heroes that have skills that benefit their other skills, like Death Prophet has Witchcraft, which decrease the cooldown on her spells, but there's no item and there's no cooldown reduction stats. Spell Vamp is also absent from this game, so there's no items that provide you a regeneration when you use spells on enemies. All heroes in Dota 2 also use mana, so there's nothing such as Ferocity, such as Rage, Energy, or Heat. There's only mana in Dota 2. The attack damage is the amount of damage you inflict upon the enemy when you right-click him. Remember that in Dota 2, since you have a main attribute, each point in that attribute also increases your attack damage by 1. Attack speed somehow works the same in both games. The base mechanics behind it is a bit different, but just think that in League of Legends the max attack speed is 2.5 attacks per second, where in Dota it depends on the hero, it's around 3 per second, but it's really similar anyway. Now, movement speed is different. You have a hard cap in Dota 2 that means you cannot go above 522 movement speed except for some very specific spells. In League of Legends, it is soft cap, so you can go above the threshold, but it will give you reduced amount of movement speed. It will not give you the amount of movement speed that is shown on your item. Lifesteal works somewhat like the new Spell Vamp from League of Legends. You cannot stack the same items 50 times to get more lifesteal. In League of Legends, you can just stack the lifesteal. In Dota 2, it depends on the source. Critical strike is also very different in those two games. In League of Legends, you can stack up the chance as well as the damage. So for example, with the Infinity Edge and the runes, you can get up to, I think, 300% critical damage. In Dota 2, each source of critical strike is independent, so that means you can have 25% chance to deal twice the damage and 15% chance to deal 4 times the damage. The only difference is that you cannot crit with 2 critical strikes with 1 attack. It will only take into account the most powerful crit. Dota 2 also doesn't have the penetration stat, it only has the reduction stat, so no armor penetration and no magic penetration. What's the big difference? Penetration cannot go under 0, and it's also a personal stat. That means if I have more penetration, I will deal more damage to the enemy, but reduction is actually a debuff. So if I reduce the enemy armor, all my allies will deal increased damage to the target. So Dota 2 has those magic and armor reduction, but not penetration. One last stat I almost forgot to mention is something the old League of Legends player will know of. It's the evasion stat that got removed from League of Legends. In Dota 2 it's still here and it doesn't stack in any way, so skill plus item, it's not gonna work. It's just gonna take the highest value. Alright, so this is it. Thank you for watching. I hope you actually enjoyed the video and also learned something from it. If you actually liked it, please remember to subscribe, like the video, yada yada, but basically you know the gist. And well, I'll see you guys next time for other cast or videos on League of Legends and Dota 2 as well as advanced mechanics. See ya!